Welcome, climate viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com, WeatherModificationHistory.com, and ClimateViewer.org. I want to talk to you today about playing God in geoengineering governance. There's a lot going on right now. They're trying to make international laws to govern the blocking of sunlight, and we're going to whip through it real quickly. The grandfather of climate science just died, and he had some parting words, urging the use of geoengineering technologies and a whole lot more. We're going to go through Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, and a bunch more. Thank you guys for tuning in. And everything you're about to see is free of charge, open source, and I encourage you to share this video, like and comment. Please, if you can, support me on patreon.com, PayPal, and GoFundMe. Greatly appreciate it. And remember to like, subscribe, and please subscribe to my new channel, User Climate Viewer. That'd be greatly appreciated. So what's going on? The grandfather of climate science, Wallace Smith Broker, gave one last warning before his death. And as we can see right here, I'm going to blow it up real big. Broker's message was delivered to researchers attending a conference centered on untested solutions to climate change in the Planetary Management Symposium on Climate Engineering at Arizona State University. If we're going to prevent the planet from warming up another couple degrees, we're going to have to go to geoengineering. And there you go. So, apparently Broker's solution, sometimes called the sulfate solution or the sulfur solution or the Pinatubo strategy, after the massive 1991 volcanic eruption in the Philippines that cooled the planet by 1 degree Fahrenheit for a full year, involves releasing massive amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere at some 70,000 feet, mimicking volcanic explosion. And they go on to talk about how he spent, 40 years working on this. And, the whole 97% of scientists agree on climate change is going to kill us all. So this is the only solution, of course, which has also been preached pretty readily in the Green New Deal, Agenda 2030, Technocracy, and Geoengineering. I just recently covered this. Check that out on ClimateViewer. All of these links are already in the details, so I'm just going to whip through this quickly. You'll have to do some reading and some homework if you want to get the full story. But even better, I covered it in Geoengineering Governance, India, Monsoons, Plane Farts, and Dead People. And this really goes through the heart of what the problem is. They're really, saying that, yes, we are entering a grand solar minimum. Modified Unlimited in chat just brought up a great point. So really, what I see is the big, and I've had this question a lot lately. I think they know that we're going into a grand solar minimum, and they're planning for geoengineering now and saying that the globe is going to heat, radically, and people are going to die. And that's why AOC's, we're all going to die in 10 years anyway. So that when we do enter that grand solar minimum and we cool and they have legalized geoengineering, they can take credit for it. And they can say, see, it worked. And, all the stupid people will go, great job, guys. Geoengineering saved our lives and the planet cooled down. But really, it's much more complicated than that. I mean, we already have geoengineering, worldwide with ship tracks and plane farts. And, it's a complicated topic. Most people refer to it as chemtrails. And, it's a really interesting that, when you really dig into any of this, what you realize is things like this. UN Assistant Secretary General Janos Pastor said the emissions and climate change that we're causing with that is already a massive experiment on our world that we don't really know the outcome of. So I don't think we should start another set of experiments and go into geoengineering. I think we should get our act together and reduce emissions. Now remember, he said we shouldn't go into geoengineering, but what do we find right here on Harvard's Solar Geoengineering Research Program? Do a little search for Janos, and what do you see? Here's him talking at the U.S. Solar Geoengineering Research Forum. I don't know why we don't have audio on that. Why don't we have audio on that? I have it muted. Derp.
So, and I think it's the first point I was going to make was made the whole morning about the importance of governance. There is an issue there. It's complicated. It's challenging. A lot of work still needs to be done on that, and we've set up our initiative precisely to try to contribute to filling that governance gap.
Okay, so he says, we shouldn't go into geoengineering, but here he is hanging out at Harvard talking about, well, we should figure out how to govern geoengineering. But that's not the only hypocrisy. He's also part of the Carnegie Climate Geoengineering Governance Initiative, where he is the executive director. So the United Nations knee deep in this whole idea that we're gonna go to geoengineering, whether you like it or not, and that's just the way this train is headed. So what do we have here? India should demand international political oversight for geoengineering research and development. This was just recently posted. This is December 28th, 2018, and magically. We go straight to it. Here is the National Academy of Sciences developing a research agenda and research governance approaches for climate intervention strategies that reflect sunlight to cool the earth. Followed up by Switzerland puts geoengineering governance on UN environmental agenda 02/26/2019. So Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and now Agenda Geoengineering. The United Nations will be, ruling on this. That's their whole point. And from my favorite anti-geoengineering group, the ETC group, why is geoengineering being discussed at the UNEA, and how should civil society respond? And they go into great detail about this. Where's the, all right, so at the fourth meeting of the United Nations Environmental Assembly on March 11th through the 15th, 2019 in Nairobi, Kenya, the international community will discuss a draft resolution on geoengineering governance tabled by Switzerland and as of 5 March 2019, co-sponsored by other members of EIG, the Environmental Integrity Group, a negotiating bloc of the UNFCCC consisting of South Korea, Mexico, Liechtenstein, is that how you pronounce that? Monaco, and Georgia, and a number of other member states, Burkina Faso, Federated States of Micronesia, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Montenegro, and New Zealand. The Swiss resolution calls for assessment of the status of geoengineering technologies and potential governance frameworks for each technology. An ad hoc independence expert group is supposed to advise the executive director on developments of the aforementioned assessment. The assessment would be delivered by August 2020. And could likely provide a basis for future decisions on regulatory mechanisms by UNEA and other international bodies building on the assessment. So by August 2020, they're going to have a definitive answer on whether or not, how to go forward with governing or writing international laws on how geoengineering should be used. even though it's already happening, and they're, really starting to take it to the next level with the David Keith, testing this in the open air, the legal form of geoengineering. Expert preaches to Vatican on geoengineering to combat climate change. March 7th, 2019. Oh, now we're getting there. And this is really where, it gets weird, because, this is for me, partly a religious thing, because, should man have control over the climate? I say no. I think most of my viewing audience agrees, and all of the polls that have ever been put out there that were honest polls have determined that the answer is definitively no. But they're going to go ahead with that anyway. The one clear ethical principle that has our highest priority should be emissions reductions, Gardner said as he's preaching on the issue together with his colleagues and over 1,000 scientists who work with the United Nations, because he said the world's population needs to come together and he sees a role of religion as key. And then it goes on to talk about the climate of Paris, the Paris Accords, and how they're never going to be able to do it. This means 45% reductions by 2030 from the levels in 2010. Then half again in the following 10 years and half again. So basically zero by 2050. It's a huge challenge. If we don't, we'll pass the 1.5 or 2 degree increase, or maybe even 3. It's a real problem. The skeptics who don't believe in this science, well, they're all Americans, I'm sure. It's really well accepted around the world. The IPCC is a panel of more than 1,000 scientists from around the world, and they're more than 98% certain that the climate is warming and that it is the fault of human beings. That is the most often used bullshit line ever. The 97-98% agreement thing is, go look it up. There are many videos that go through how that study was done and how they, picked and choose the scientists to say that they agree. But there are so many flaws in climate modeling that I have covered in depth. Please, if you haven't watched this video, it is lengthy, but it is worth it. I go through many of those flaws and why they shouldn't agree, or they're just outright lying, which can be, we're all warming. We are warming all around the world. We're seeing signs that are convincing even Americans, and we're not acting quickly enough. That's kind of scary, and you feel as if your back is against the wall here. Imagine what would happen if someone came in and said, we have a solution, engineering the climate so the temperature doesn't rise as much otherwise would, which can also be translated into playing God with the climate. That is why our last report, it was called Playing God. How science fiction is it? We'll throw something in the sky and it's going to rain. Now, any of you have been to weathermodificationhistory.com already know that, they still can't prove, how much it's going to rain, or that they are making it rain when they do cloud seeding, and they've been doing it for 60 years. They've been doing geoengineering. They've been geoengineering our skies for well over 60 years, and they still have no clue what effects it has. Anyway, another way to engineer the climate is solar radiation management, which implies blocking some of the rays of the sun, deflecting them back into space. A volcano does this, for instance. When it erupts, it releases sulfur into the atmosphere, and the global temperature actually cools. And they talk about other things. What can religions do? The biggest thing we can do is insist that we take emission reduction seriously. That's the only option, and has no ecological cost, only benefits, and it's groundwork for sustainable development. Oh, if you see that sustainable word, technocracy is around the corner. The reason I'm preaching about this is because one of the scientists at Harvard who wants to reflect away solar rays is starting tests this year. He's doing some preliminary tests to determine what he needs. It's beginning. I was at the Vatican's Dicastery for Integral Human Development, and I was talking to them about the need for governance. That is participatory governance. That is that all governments will have a say in this, that we insist on reductions, and that we don't begin the testing until we actually link it to reductions in emissions. Another of the disadvantages of reflecting away solar rays is that it's successful at keeping the temperature down, but it changes the rainfall patterns, including in the Amazon, for what the models tell us. But as Pope Francis says, the Amazon is one of the lungs of the world. Now, you guys know that that's been my main point all along, is that geoengineering isn't about global temperatures and, cooling the planet. It's about control of resources. They know that when they do get away with making legalized United Nations geoengineering worldwide, that it's going to change rainfall patterns worldwide. And generally speaking, the southern hemisphere is going to get drier, the northern hemisphere is going to get wetter. So that means dead brown people in the southern hemisphere and more water for the northern hemisphere. And if you want to talk about control of water and the blue gold rush, watch some of my older videos. It'll become readily apparent to you that this is really the underlying problem that they have. So that's why David Keith is the scientist that he's talking about. And this article just was published today, I believe, or yesterday. Engineering the Earth. Year after year, the threat of impending climate catastrophe looms larger in public consciousness. David W. Keith, an applied physics professor, is working on a solution. And I've covered that solution in detail. David Keith's sun dimming experiment, ScopeX, possibly coming spring 2019, all the facts. Now, this was originally called the Strato Shield when Bill Gates and Nathan Myhrvold, the patent troll, invented it, and it's been renamed to the Strato Cruiser, which you can see a picture of right down here. This is the Strato Shield, Intellectual Ventures Lab, 2013. Bill Gates and company invented it. And then you have ScopeX, the Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment, which is what David Keith is planning. And it's called the Strato Cruiser Flight System. And basically, it's the exact same idea. Float a balloon up into the stratosphere, drop down a canister, spray chemicals in the stratosphere. So here we go. Again, it's really being, I have my Google alerts and other ways of telling, what's going on in the news. And for that matter, if you look at the very top of ClimateViewer.com, geoengineering news right here, you can just flip through them and see all of the, stuff that's going on. Rethinking the governance of solar geoengineering. And it's, it's been coming up a lot lately. So this is something that's not going to go away. One man's 2-decade quest to suck greenhouse gas out of the sky. And the list goes on. Wallace Smith Broker, the grandfather of climate scientists, leaves a final warning for Earth. Apparently that's on NBC News as well. That's what we started with right up here. So this is really, their big plan. It's not going away. It's certainly not going away fast enough for me. And that's why I proposed the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. It's available at ClimateViewer.com/InMod. We do need some accountability for the people who are going to modify the weather, especially on a global scale, which solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, and all of these plans will do. It will change weather modification or water on a worldwide basis. They already have 10 technologies to control the weather today, and most people don't know about any of them. So it's really necessary for people to, find out the more the intentional weather modification that they use with these technologies in this infographic, and get on board with a solution that can, really put us in the driver's seat, as opposed to just being, willing participants. So, guys, geoengineering governance coming to the United Nations, Agenda 2030. No, how about Agenda 2019? David Keith and his ScopeX Strato Cruiser is going to be deployed in Arizona. They've got a balloon company. It's going to float his boat. And we really got to put a stop to this somehow, some way. But right now, from, the United Nations to the Vatican to, all over the government, 97% of climate scientists agree that we're all going to die from CO2. So we better spray some sunscreen in the sky. Oh, that's going to kill a whole bunch of people, but screw it. We'd rather do the killing than let, God or Mother Nature or climate change. The climate has always changed. It will continue to change. How much of it is caused by humans? Unknown. How much of it is caused by CO2? Very little. If you look at the grand scheme of things, you need to look into electromagnetic particle precipitation. From ionospheric heaters to punching holes in the ionosphere to the grand solar minimum to galactic cosmic ray penetration of the atmosphere, how clouds form. None of this stuff is in any of the climate models, but they can tell you for certainty we're all going to die. It's because the planet's going to heat up, and it's because of CO2. And, I call bullshit. So, yes, there are Americans who are free thinkers with free speech who disagree with this narrative. But they're going to continue to push along because science, because we all agree that this is a thing. Even though we've got flawed computer models, it's worth it to try. So now they're going to, pass laws globally to govern the use of geoengineering, and it's coming straight out of the United Nations. So let's try to circumvent that by getting on board with some accountability, some transparency on what's already going on before they move towards legalization of what David Keith is attempting to pull off. Once again, I would greatly appreciate everybody that supported me on Patreon.com. I was able to pay for the server this year without having to do a old school Facebook style donation drive. So thank you to everybody at Patreon. The server's up for another year. All three websites paid for. And I was able to basically reserve the ClimateViewer.com URL for 9 years. And so that's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'd be remiss not to mention that I just got my first piece of fan art, which I'm very, very stoked about. As some of you may know, I was born in the year of the dragon, 1976. And in Chinese mythology, dragons control the weather. So is this part destiny that I'm here today talking about weather modification? Possibly. But regardless, Spray Can Ann made me this ClimateViewer dragon, which I absolutely love. Look at it spin and dance for me, flat earthers. Oh, no, right here. No stupid people allowed beyond this point. Spray Can Ann is in the room. I absolutely love it. Is that not cool? So this dragon is a very happy dragon today. I absolutely love it. And I couldn't be prouder. It is so amazing looking. Very, very cool. Had to show that off. Thank you so much to Spraycan and who is in chat. Honey girl, you just made moderator. Let me change that. And she also sent some jewelry for my daughters too. Just amazing. I really appreciate that. And one more off the topic before we go. Some of you may know Patrick Roddy. I've gotten many questions about where he has gone, and apparently Patrick has had some serious problems with his brain. And
Facebook for a long time, and the reason is because, actually, hang on. I'm sorry it's up, I should have been across, but I've suffered a severe brain trauma. I fell out of a tree in November, and since then I've been damaged, and I've got a severe brain injury. Unfortunately, at the same time, I have a very unpleasant landlord, and it's the PradoGroup.com. PradoGroup.com, they are a notorious property owner in San Francisco. What they do is they buy properties that have a high number of rent-controlled tenants. I've been in this apartment for 25 years. I moved in 1994. A long time. It's a beautiful Art Deco place, and if you can see the, it's a lovely place. This is the bathroom. So I'm getting evicted today.
So Patrick, if you guys don't know what Patrick looks like, this is what he normally looks like. So to see Patrick in this condition, it's kind of heartbreaking. He hasn't, been posting for quite some time, and then he, posted this video of his brain tumor. Apparently he received some rabies shots, and that exacerbated the problem. But regardless, he's in a bad way right now. So you just putting it out there, if you guys can help him out, really sucks for the situation he's in. So I shared this video out. Let me get the link real quick. This is his PayPal. And I'm going to drop that one in chat. So if you guys know Patrick Roddy from Stop Spraying Us San Francisco, check him out on Facebook. Send him some prayers, and tell him I sent you. But just wanted to throw that one in as well. Pine needles in the juicer. No, I've never tried that. But yeah, Patrick, he's been at this a long time, and I was really surprised to see him disappear, and everybody was worried about him. I've gotten numerous emails about where's Patrick Roddy, and this just came back. So, I sent him some money, and I'm asking you guys to do the same. So, we got to look out for our own, and he is one of our own. So, love you, mean it, Patrick. I hope you get well soon, and boy, I hate to end on such a depressing note. But yeah, we're praying for your speedy recovery, dude. All right, well, guys, geoengineering, it's on its way, coming quickly. I'm going to try to get more information on the exact launch date for David Keith's little balloon. And if possible, I'd love to be there. Get my little spitball gun out and shoot a hole in that balloon. But regardless, the United Nations is going full speed ahead. Carnegie Mellon, the C2G2.net, and the U.S. Harvard Forum for Climate U.S. Solar Geoengineering Research. They're all pushing ahead with this sort of thing. And we really need to speak up now and, tell them, hands off my sky. So, love you guys, mean it. With information comes power. With power comes great responsibility. So please use this information to attack ideas, not people.
Kids are impressionable. That's why here at this station, we watch the programs and commercials your child watches carefully. He may see bad guys, but not in the role of heroes. And he'll learn that crime doesn't pay. Because your child's welfare is our concern, too. That's part of our code.
Better than anything you can get without a prescription. Anything. It's the best.